And welcome back for lesson 6. Our tune for lesson 6 is Classical Gas, but not in this series, maybe in a later series. Our tune for series 1, lesson 6 is Rockabye Baby. Okay, a little bit of seriousness here. The scale of D, let's see if we can get it together. Okay, let's start now. Found that was just a little fast. Let's slow down, okay? Start now. All right, keep practicing that. It'll be flowing something like this. In a few weeks' time, take it from me. Next scale, let's count up from the key of D. First note is D, second is E, F sharp, G, and the fifth note is A. All right. Well, we'll be starting with A, 2 semitones up, 1, another 2, 2, then 1 semitone to D. We'll have 3 whole notes now, E, F sharp from way back G scale days, the new one, G sharp and A. Okay, once more, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp and A. Okay, let's flip over this chart and have a look at the key signature of A major. 3 sharps, the one in the circle is our new one, called C sharp. I beg your pardon, called G sharp, way over here. Okay, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp and A. Notice we have, as an example, when we run out of the staff, we have to put an extra little line there. And of course you'll recall that is a ledger line. All right then, I think I'd like to talk to you a little bit about practicing hints. The worst habits that I've found is students will play something up to a point, they make a mistake, and they stop and they start again. The result of that is as follows. The first bar gets about 20 times the amount of practice as the last bar. So, to restart after a mistake is a no-no, and within these hints I'll give you some ideas of what to do when you do make a mistake. Another bad habit, very bad habit indeed, is start off a little bit too fast and the student is able to handle the piece, and every time a trick gets a little bit tricky or a little bit more difficult, they simply slow down, and when they're over the hard bit they speed up again. So they're playing a piano like they were driving a car. They slow down when there's a lot of traffic and then pick up on the clear road. That's not the way to do it in music. It's very important to keep strict time, with the exception that when the music calls for slowing down for added feeling, that's a different thing. We'll cover that in later lessons. But the hints I'd like you to remember is whenever you're learning a new piece, learn it one hand at a time, okay? Get your notes together on one hand, all right? Read through one hand at a time. So say you're starting with the left hand. It's not a bad idea to start with the left hand, otherwise it gets a tendency to get a little bit left behind. Concentrate on the left hand, especially if you're right-handed. Right, read through the whole tune. That'll gain you experience in reading the notes themselves and give you a chance to get your fingering sorted out. Don't worry too much about the timing, okay? Just read one note after the other. You've got to find the notes before you can even decide when to play them. Okay, so ignore the timing on the first couple of passes until you get quite happy with finding all the notes that are required. If you've played a wrong note, you've forgotten to play a sharp that is part of the key signature or a flat, as the case may be, your ear will probably tell you. Okay. Now, the third hint would be to learn the tune piecemeal. Take a few bars at a time, and it really depends on the melody itself, just how far you can take it, but something that sits together. Normally the end of a bar would be a reasonable place to stop, a couple of bars at a time, but if you've got a little bit of a phrase that carries over from one bar to the next, I'll explain phrasing again in a later lesson. Okay, go just a little bit beyond it. You don't have to stop right on the bar line to practice a certain little piece of music. Okay? Learn a bit at a time, and when you've learnt one piece, move on to the next. Don't join them together just yet. Otherwise, again, the same problem will occur. You'll practice the early parts far too much, and the latter parts don't get enough practice. Okay? Now, when you're finally able to link the whole thing together, do it slowly, very slowly, but at a constant tempo. That's very important. Okay? Now, as you're going through, you'll find that you're able to slowly, little by little, increase the tempo. And that's where your metronome comes in. It was introduced in the last lesson. Use your metronome to guide you, and you can increase the tempo a little bit at a time, and you can feel yourself getting better and more confident as the tempo increases. Okay? Now, every bar should not be practiced exactly the same amount of times, because some bars are simply harder than others. Concentrate on those. Don't just sit down and practice for half an hour and just make sure you play something for half an hour so you satisfy your parents, but concentrate on all the hard parts, hard bars, and not so much the easy ones. Okay? Number 6, when you've got all that through, one hand at a time, and don't forget you've got to repeat that. After you've done it all for the left hand, you've got to go back and do it for the right hand. Then you've got to do both hands at once. Now you'll find that to do both hands together, you'll have to slow down even more than you did to learn them one hand at a time. But what should help you is that both hands have been through the whole thing quite a bit of times, and you should be able to play it two hands. But you have to start slower and increase the tempo, maybe even more gradually than you did one hand at a time. Okay? Now finally, I did promise to say what to do when you do make a mistake, because you're certainly going to make them. Most important thing that I advise is not to lose count. If you've got the metronome going, fine, keep the count going in your head. If you haven't got a metronome, just count aloud. Nobody will mind. Okay? Keep the count going, and if you made a mistake somewhere in the bar, count out the rest of the bar and come in with that bar again, and if you've done your little bit of concentration on the hard bits, you should be able to get that bar right. So just keep doing that until such time as you got the difficult part sorted out. Okay? So don't forget those 7 points. Make a mental note of them, or you make a note of them on paper too, because I'm going to clear the blackboard right now. Right, our new tune, as we mentioned, is Rock-a-Bye Baby. We don't have very much new to learn in this one, and in fact what we've got is a repeat of our time signature of 3/4 that we had in the last lesson, and also we've got the dotted note. Okay, I'd like to remind you we've got that the same as we did in Silent Night. Okay, that's 1 and 2 and. Okay, once again I suggest you go through, and in pencil perhaps, so you can rub it out later when you get better, write the count in. Okay, 1 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. That's the way the tune goes. So write all those counts in for the right hand. The left hand, we'll concentrate on that in just a little bit of detail in a minute, but the left hand is played on the count of 1, 2, 3 all the time, so that should aid you with the count, and it should aid you if you've got a metronome. Okay, with the left hand we have something new to play. We've played chords before, we haven't quite played them in this way. What we've got is we've got the 3 beats of the bar. Okay, we play a note on that beat, and we play something on that beat and that beat. Okay? But I want to hold that. I beg your pardon, I should have shown it like that. Play that note, and that note. But I want to hold that for the whole bar, you see? So the only way I can do it is to turn that back into a minim and give it a dot. Okay? So now that's held for 1, 2, 3. But I want to play other things on 2 and 3. Okay, in fact I'll play 2 notes at a time, as you see on your music, and I don't want to play anything for that on the count of 1. So I'll put in a rest for the first crotchet. In other words, the left hand is divided into 2 parts. The left hand has got a bass part, something like a bass guitar would have in a band, and it's got accompaniment, something like a rhythm guitar would have in a band, okay? So that's your accompaniment, and that's your bass. Now, both act as separate instruments, okay? Now, that's the beauty of a piano. You can have your right hand playing lead, and your left hand playing accompaniment, and also bass notes. That's what makes the piano a truly standalone instrument. Okay, I think we need a whiteboard. It can be there for you to look at if you get a chance to look at it. And I'd like to now go through Rockabye Baby. Left hand first. Oh dear, one thing. Look down the second last bar. Okay, now I've just glanced there and I see something I haven't mentioned. And we have, if you have a look at your second last bar, we have an F sharp followed by a sign that I don't think we've covered yet. If we have, we'll cover it again. Right, okay. We have in the bass clef, we have an F sharp, played again, and then we have something like that. Okay? That sign is a natural sign. What it does, it cancels the effect of the sharp. So that note is again F natural. Now that's not part of the key signature. You see our key signature is C, Rockabye Baby is in the key of C, yet somewhere in there I've written in an F sharp to be played. Now that's not part of the key signature, and whenever sharps or flats or naturals are written in, they are called accidentals. Now accidentals are covered in more detail in lesson 8. In fact, I think it's their inclusion here is a little bit accidental too. Never mind. Here we go. Left hand. 1, 2, 3. Stop for a minute, and let's have a look at the fingering. We start with finger number 3 because we're playing the C major chord, but also in the next bar we'll be playing a bass note of G below that. So it'll be like this. 2, 3. Down to G. C again. Little finger on G. 2, 4 on B and D. Okay? Now in the next bar, I've got the second finger on D and the F played twice on their own as accompaniment. Down to G, F and D together. C, E and G. Now a little bit of run up. This is often used in bass. 5, 4, 3, 2 back on C. Did you notice that? That's bar number 8 and 9. The fingers play G, A, B followed by C. In fact, they are the last 4 notes of the C major scale as you're coming up with the left hand. A little bit different fingering, however, because we're in a different area. We're not just playing the scale. Okay? Let's play the last 8 bars then for the left hand. We start on finger number 2 because that's where we left it from the previous bar, and then we change onto E on the first finger, and then we move our hand slightly to play E and the G with the first and second finger. So from bar number 8 to practice that little run up, okay? 1, 2, G. E and G together, down the bottom. D, F, G, D, F. Now here's where the difficult part comes in. We play D, F sharp twice, then G, F together, and the C and the E. Okay, let's do that last line again. The last 4 bars, starting with D. 1, 2, 3. D, F, F, G, F sharp, F, and C and E together. Notice I slowed down because it was a little bit harder, okay? Now that's one part you will need to practice quite a bit. I'll advise you to play the right hand through as we do this, but I'll play the right and left hands together from here on. Okie doke. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, how did you go with that? Notice you have to, because your span is not big enough to cover all the notes, you have to start on the second finger and use the first finger on the G and then up to the top E. Okay? Again, 1, 2, 3. That's Rockabye Baby, and that's the end of lesson 6. Notice that I did slow down a little bit in the second last bar, partly because it was more difficult, partly to give you a chance to play it properly, and also because it just felt a little bit better. Okay? See you in lesson 7. Bye now. Hello and welcome back to lesson 7 of Video School of Music for Piano. I'm glad you stayed with us this long. It's been lots of fun. The tune of that, I beg your pardon, the title of that tune was the Music Box Dancer, and that's the tune we've got selected for lesson 7. But before we get on to the tune itself, let's go back over our scale. In the last lesson we learnt the scale of A major, and if you've been doing your practice you should be able to play it roughly about this tempo. And down. Alright, scales are very important. I keep reminding you this because only that way will you get your fingers to move smoothly from note to note. The new scale we've got for this lesson is the scale of E major, which starts on the 5th note of A major. Let's count them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th note of A major is E, and the next, which is the next scale in progression, E is the one that gets the next sharp. Let's go to the board. Treble clef. In the key of A major we had F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. Our new one is D sharp. Let's check that with our structure. Recall our structure for the major scale is 2.5, 3.5. That's our intervals. Two full notes, semitone, 3 full tones and a semitone. So we're going to count them off. Starting on E. There you are. There's your E. Go up 2 tones. F sharp, another 2 tones. G sharp, semitone, A. We're now over here. We've got 3 full tones and a semitone to go. So we're on A, B, C sharp. There's our new sharp, just D sharp and E. Let's go back. Thumb under, same thing as all the other white scales except F. Okay, well you shouldn't have any trouble now to find the structure of the major scale, and in fact you could start on any key at all. You should be able to find the notes in any major scale. So that's E major. Oh, one more further note on the fingering. I think I've mentioned already that every major scale that starts on a white note gets the same fingering with the exception of F, and one we haven't done yet is the B major. So right hand, thumb under on the A, and down. Left hand starts on the 5th finger, C sharp, D sharp, E, and down again. Thumb under on the B, there we are. Now practice those one hand at a time, and then 2 hands together, and first for 1 octave and then for 2 octaves as we've been doing. All right, so much for scales. We've got a few new things to learn in this lesson before we can move on to Music Box Dancer. One of them is something similar to the tie, which was, as you'll recall, a tie was something that was placed between 2 notes to show you that the notes was held either within the bar or across bars. And of course they look something like this. Okay. A slur is the same shape, exactly the same shape as a tie, but you'll note that the slur will not normally finish on the same note that a tie. Tie must start and finish on the same note and joins 2 notes together. Sometimes you may occasionally have a 3rd one, but that's rather rare. A slur, on the other hand, joins quite a few notes like that. And it doesn't mean they've all got to be held. It simply means that that is like a musical statement, a musical sentence called a phrase. Now we'll come to see in Music Box Dancer what a phrase is. A little bit about the a little bit of a reminder about your note values. Whole note, 4 counts, minim, 2 counts, crotchet, 1 count, quaver, there's 2 quavers to the crotchet, and 4 semiquavers to the crotchet. We've introduced in an earlier lesson the idea of a dotted note, which increased its value by 1/2. We had, if we take a crotchet and tie it, hold it together with a quaver, that is exactly the same as a crotchet with a little dot after it. That is called a dotted note. We do the same thing with rests. We can dot a rest and it has exactly the same effect. It increases the time value of the rest by 1/2. Therefore, a crotchet rest plus a quaver rest is the same as a dotted crotchet rest. Notice that where we tie the notes together to say that a note is held and not struck again, there's no need to tie rests together because one rest plus another rest is obviously continuation of the same rest. So that's why there's never a tie mark between rests. But the point is, important thing to note is that where a dotted note increases the value of the note by 1/2, a dotted rest is in fact the same thing as the same rest value, the time value increased by 1/2. Okay, I would like to cover a couple of other things about the structure of the way music is written and presented. If you have a very long piece of music, as I mentioned before, we've got pages and pages to write. If there is so many bars of it which are the same, the sign that is used is a repeat sign to show that all the bars between those repeat signs has to be played again. There is another way of repeating a number of bars of music, and that is called del segno, sometimes shown simply as a $sign. I think that's the way they're shown on New Music. That means when you reach one of those signs, you have to go back till you find similar, much the same as snakes and ladders. You simply go back to look for where that sign appeared before and follow it straight through back to where you went and past that point. Music Box Dancer uses both of these signs, both of these symbols. If you have a look at your music, you'll find that right on the top of the first bar you'll see the sign looks like a $sign. When you begin your music, that has no effect. All you need is to remember to come back to that when you see the other $sign later on in your music. So you play your first 4 bars, etc., etc., etc. You've got a beginning of you've got the left side of a repeat sign on the 4th line of your music, and the next 8 bars are in fact between repeat signs. But before you reach the repeat sign on the right, you encounter what is the $sign that I've just introduced you, all properly called del segno. Now that sign takes you back to the first bar before you even get to the repeat. Okay, so the way the music would be played is to play line 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. At the end of line 5, but not because of the repeat sign, because of the $sign or the del segno, you begin the music all over again. And this time you play lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The second time the $sign has no effect, otherwise you would never be able to finish the piece of music if it took you back every time. Then you reach the repeat sign, and that repeat sign says go back and find the occurrence of the repeat sign which opposes it, and that is in the line above it, of course. So you play line 4 again, then line 5, and then you go out in playing line 6. Now that is the structure of this tune. Okay, we're nearly ready to start playing this one. Just a couple more things. Reminder, it is again in 3 parts. Well, I only got 2 hands. Your right hand plays the melody. I can get rid of this now. I think we've finished the F scale. Your right hand plays the melody, and your left hand has 2 parts to play. Now, it doesn't make it twice as hard. It simply means it's got to be written in a certain way to make those 2 parts come together. You've got the accompaniment plus bass notes. The reason I've made them into 2 parts is because when you have a look at your music, have a look at say bar number 5. That's the first bar on the second line. You'll see that the left hand has the C below middle C to play and is held for 2 counts. Then, whilst that's held, above it, above the minimum note, there is a crotchet rest and 2 quavers. That makes 1, 2. Okay, and that's the way the left hand plays. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the C note is held for the 2 counts, and the accompaniment in fact is a rest, pop, pum. So it's rest, 2, 3, 4,